Have you ever walked through a subway station and felt watched? Not by people, but by the walls, the lights, the silence between footsteps that stretches just a little too long. Beneath the surface of our cities, deep in the tunnels we ignore, art isn't just hanging on the walls. It's hiding, breathing, waiting. And sometimes it's not meant to comfort. Sometimes it's meant to disturb. What if the haunting feeling you get at a certain platform isn't paranoia, but design? In this episode of Track 13, we're pulling into the strangest stations on Earth, where art installations do more than decorate. They unsettle. They whisper forgotten stories. Some are intentionally ominous. Others, accidental horrors born from aging tiles, flickering lights, and a history soaked in sorrow. We'll descend into a ghostly station that never sees a train, sculptures that sing without voices, stained glass that glows with dystopian propaganda, and memorials woven from fire hoses, soaked in real trauma. These places weren't built for fear, but time, context, and silence turned them into underground confessionals, where you don't hear prayers, only echoes. This isn't just about creepy vibes, it's about how public art, created with the best intentions, can tap into our deepest anxieties. Isolation, surveillance, death, decay. Sometimes the scariest canvas is the one millions walk by each day, never realizing what's staring back. These aren't ghost stories. They're real, built by human hands, approved by cities, funded by governments. So ask yourself, can art carry trauma? Can a public space haunt you? And if you listen long enough, can a subway station scream? Welcome aboard Track 13. Imagine standing on a platform that leads nowhere, tracks that twist into shadow, stairs that promise escape, but are sealed shut. This is Deep Station, Donna Dennis's haunting art installation built between 1981 and 1985. 11 feet tall, crafted from wood, masonite, and salvage materials, it doesn't just resemble a subway station. It feels like one you dream about. The kind that turns into a labyrinth you can't escape. The installation isn't functional, but it sounds like it might be. Hidden speakers emit train noises, arrivals, departures, metallic screeches. Yet no train ever comes, no lights ever flicker on. It's a loop, a limbo. Time collapses here. It could be midnight or forever. Dennis built it as a metaphorical space, a kind of subconscious trap. The rivets are perfectly rusted. The paint splatters simulate grime. Gates block every stairway. There's no exit, only the illusion of one. Every detail is soaked in decay. Not real decay, but something worse. Staged decay. As if the station knows it's a performance, and you're the only audience. Critics often compare Deep Station to George Tooker's 1950 painting The Subway, a piece drenched in paranoia and alienation. But while Tooker worked with oils, Dennis worked with architecture. She built the unease. She made it three-dimensional. It surrounds you. In a way, Deep Station isn't just art. It's a psychological test. It asks, what do you feel when nothing makes sense? When structure offers no safety? When sound suggests movement, but nothing ever moves? This piece isn't in a real subway, but it might as well be, because real stations hold this same potential for unease, and Dennis knew that. She simply brought it to the surface. What she built was a station for the mind, and once you step in, part of you stays behind. If you walk through the 34th Street Herald Square subway station in Manhattan, you might trigger something strange. A metallic chime, a flutter of eerie notes, no visible musician, no obvious source. This is Reach New York, an urban musical instrument, a 1996 art installation by Christopher Janney. Metal bars mounted on the wall react to motion. As commuters walk past, sensors trigger sounds, designed to soothe, to delight. But over time, the piece aged into something more ghostly. The random notes echo across an otherwise sterile tunnel. There's no rhythm, no logic, just an unpredictable soundtrack playing to no one. In the dead of night, it feels less like music and more like the last signal from a machine losing its mind. Some say it feels like the station is trying to speak, but no one's left to listen. Just across the same station is another oddity, The Gold Wall by Michelle Oka Donor. 11,000 shimmering gold tiles stretch across the platform, meant to reflect light and beautify the space. But under the station's dim, flickering bulbs, the tiles don't glimmer. They shimmer in a way that looks wrong, like the walls are breathing or watching. Passengers have reported strange reflections, catching a glimpse of someone who isn't there, or their own image, warped into a different expression. Meanwhile, in Brooklyn's Atlantic Avenue Barclays Center, artist George Tracus installed a trilogy of pieces: hook, line, and sinker. Granite waves, a steel boat, elements of movement and water embedded deep underground. It sounds poetic, but to stand beside it, it's disorienting. The curves feel unnatural. The boat looks stranded. There's no ocean here, just rumbling trains and concrete echoes. It's like watching a memory decompose in slow motion, surreal yet specific. These weren't meant to scare. They were meant to inspire, connect, uplift. But New York had other plans. Because in a city built on motion, stillness becomes terrifying. A broken sound system becomes a whispering ghost. A reflective surface becomes a false face. A sculpture meant to suggest travel becomes a monument to being lost. These installations didn't change. We did. And sometimes the most haunting things in the subway aren't the rats or the shadows, but the art. Just sitting there, watching you pass. Moscow's Novoslobodskaya station is a masterpiece, but stand beneath its stained glass windows long enough, and the beauty starts to feel like a trap. Built in 1952 during the height of Soviet power, the station feels more like a cathedral than a commuter space. 32 backlit stained glass panels glow like relics, each handcrafted by Latvian artists. They depict scenes of Soviet life, workers, farmers, soldiers, all captured in glowing harmony. But harmony, as we know, can be forced. At first glance, the panels are stunning: bright reds and golds, geometric balance, smiling faces. But look longer, and the cracks start to show. The symmetry feels too perfect, the smiles too practiced. The stillness isn't peaceful, it's frozen. Like time stopped here, or was stopped on purpose. It's propaganda in its most seductive form, a utopia of glass, a frozen dream of the state. But today, that dream feels hollow. The figures no longer inspire, they haunt. Their eyes don't follow you, they trap you, as if daring you to blink first. And then there's the contrast, the raw, cold weight of the metro architecture surrounding the panels. Marble walls, iron arches, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. The artwork doesn't soften the environment, it intensifies the contradiction. Opulence buried underground, illuminating a regime that buried its own history in silence. There's no graffiti, no damage, no chaos. It's as if the station exists outside of time, like a monument sealed in glass and stone, immune to decay. Not because it's sacred, but because it's too dangerous to forget. In a way, the station becomes a mausoleum, a shrine to a version of reality that never existed. And the fact that it's still pristine, that's what makes it chilling. It hasn't been erased, it's been preserved. Like a warning or a spell. Art that once projected power now whispers control. And like many ghost stories, the scariest part isn't the ghosts themselves. It's the feeling that they never left. At first glance, it looks like abstract fabric art, woven panels, earthy tones, minimalist beauty. But look closer, the threads aren't threads. They're fire hoses, real ones, decommissioned, frayed, and stained with history. This is the work of Theaster Gates at Chicago's 95th Street Red Line station. Installed in 2018, the tapestries are stitched from hoses used during the Civil Rights era, the very tools once turned against protesters during the 1960s. Now, they hang silently, as if still dripping with memory. In a subway filled with movement, these pieces demand stillness. You don't just pass by, you pause. You feel. You question what other stories lie hidden in the walls of public space. The fire hoses are more than symbolic. They're literal relics of state violence, woven into public space. What once dispersed crowds now gathers them. What once enforced silence now creates dialogue. It's reversal as resistance. The surrounding station is sleek and modern, polished surfaces, bold colors. But these tapestries interrupt the space. They sag slightly. They breathe. They carry weight, not just physical, emotional, historical, generational. Unlike the other installations we've explored, Gates doesn't cloak horror in metaphor. He makes it visible, tangible. You can see the frays, the damage. You can almost smell the smoke. These aren't just objects, they're witnesses. They remember things people would rather forget. In a city where racial wounds still fester, Gates didn't build a statue. He built a wound that refuses to close, an artwork that pulses with unresolved pain and dares you to look directly at it. And that's the power of haunted art. Not to shock, but to remember, to hold space, to make sure history isn't buried under the noise of the present. At 95th Street, you don't walk away thinking, that was beautiful. You walk away thinking, that happened. Beneath Paris, there are stations that no longer echo with footsteps. No announcements, no rush of wind from incoming trains, just silence and decay. They're called stations fantômes, ghost stations, closed during World War II, left untouched ever since. Some, like Croix Rouge, haven't seen a passenger in over 80 years, but they still exist, preserved in darkness. And somehow, that makes them louder than ever. The ads on the walls are frozen in time, wartime slogans, outdated fonts, torn posters half-eaten by moisture. Paint peels from the ceiling in strips that resemble hands. The metal on the tracks is rusted, flaking, almost breathing. It's not designed art, it's accidental. And that's what makes it terrifying. In a way, these stations are pure liminal space. No past, no future. Just the eerie, echoing present. They exist between uses, not abandoned, not alive, just waiting. And in the waiting, a new kind of art emerges. Shapes in the grime, silhouettes in the rot, Shadows that move when nothing else does. People claim to see figures in the tunnels. Others speak of lights that flicker without power. Some even say there are trains, silver, sleek, and empty, that appear and disappear with no record of ever running. Urban myth? Maybe. But there's something about these stations that feeds the imagination. The absence of life makes room for legends, and the silence? It sings louder than any scream. Unlike curated gallery art, these ghost stations weren't made to disturb. They just refused to fade. They were forgotten, but not gone. And in doing so, they became a canvas for our deepest fears. Abandonment, isolation, the unknown. They weren't haunted by design, but they've become haunted by memory. Sometimes the scariest stories are the ones no one meant to tell. Subway art wasn't meant to scare us, but over time, intention fades and meaning mutates. These installations, buried beneath cities, echo with more than design. They carry silence, memory, and sometimes warning. Because art doesn't need to move to haunt you. It just needs to stay. Next time you ride the subway, look closer. What seems abandoned may be waiting. What looks beautiful might be watching. Subscribe for more stories where the rails meet the unknown, and drop your creepiest subway tale below. Until next time, remember, every track has a story.